You probably know Apple for their most popular product, the iPhone. Or maybe you're one of the cool 16% of computer users and you have a Mac. Maybe you have another Apple product, like an iPad, an Apple Watch, or an Apple TV. But for every one of Apple's massive, society-changing successes, there's a failure so big it almost kills the entire company. This is the story of one of those failures, the Pippin, Apple's mediocre attempt to turn the Mac into a game console, and how they failed in every way possible. Welcome to Wolf Byte. In 1994, Apple was not doing great. They didn't really have a corporate identity, and they were working on a million projects at once. And Apple saw how Nintendo was doing great with the SNES, and Sony was finishing up the PlayStation, and Sega was about to release the Saturn, and Apple thought, hey, we can do that. Let's take a Mac, make it a little less powerful, give it a controller, and call it a day. And that's exactly what they did. But Apple didn't really feel like manufacturing this console. So, ignoring the massive failure of EA founder Trip Hawkins with his 3DO console a few years ago, they decided to license the Pippin out as a hardware standard. But what made the Pippin so bad? Maybe it was the price. It launched at $600, which is equivalent to $1,200 today. But let's take a look at the console itself. There were 3 released Pippin models. The Pippin ATMARK and Pippin ATWorld were developed by Bandai, and the Cat's Media Player 2000 was made by some Norwegian company. The ATMARK was sold in Japan, the ATWorld in the US, and the Cat's Media Player in Canada and Europe. And now, tech fans, the hardware. The Pippin is based on the PowerPC architecture, which I made a video about a few weeks ago. The Pippin ships with 6 to 8 megabytes of RAM, which is upgradable. It maxes out at 32 megabytes. The big problem with the Pippin is the operating system. The OS isn't actually stored on the system, it has to be loaded from each game CD. This results in long boot times, but it did make for easy software updates. The OS is basically classic Mac OS 7, but it directly boots into each program. Some Mac apps and games could run on Pippin, and vice versa. The Pippin outputs video via VGA, composite, or S-Video. It could connect to the internet via an included dial-up modem. The Pippin's controllers were pretty weird. They have a D-pad, 4 face buttons, 2 shoulder buttons, and 3 buttons on the bottom. But they also have a trackball. You heard me right, one of those pre-trackpad type of things they used on the PowerBook line. Not a common controller feature at all. All the controllers and accessories connected to the Pippin using a proprietary port called Applejack. Each Pippin had 2 of these, and they were just upgraded Apple desktop bus ports. Speaking of accessories, the Pippin had some weird ones. There was an expansion slot on the bottom of the console that was based on a modified PCI interface. Using this, the console could be connected to several expansion docks. These included a floppy disk drive and a magneto optical disk drive. Those 2 were the only docks released. But several more were planned, including an Ethernet dock, zip disk reader, and SCSI port adapter. There were also many external accessories that could plug into the Pippin. A few Apple StyleWriter printers and several Epson printers had Pippin support, meaning printing from the Pippin was possible. There was also an external keyboard that also had a digitizing tablet and stylus. And lastly, the weirdest expansion of them all, the SuperCat barcode reader. A few Japanese retail stores used Pippins for checkout machines, but these scanners weren't really used anywhere else. Now let's talk about software and games. The Pippin used CD-ROM disks to launch software, just like most computers of the time. There were many programs and games made directly for the Pippin, but most were adapted from existing Mac software. A process called Pippinization allows Mac software to be authenticated for the Pippin. Bandai was in charge of marketing most software, and they planned to launch over 200 Pippin titles, though only half of them actually made it to production. On the software side, the Pippin had a lot of educational apps and games, and several productivity apps, including a Mosaic-based web browser. There was even an unofficial disc that came out a few years after the console that let it just straight up boot classic Mac OS. But I know what you guys are here for, the games. I'm going to tell you about the best and most influential games on the Pippin, because there's not a lot of them. Number 5, Power Rangers Zeo vs. the Machine Empire. This was a fighting game based on the Power Rangers TV series. It wasn't that great of a game, but it gave the Pippin bigger appeal to younger audiences. Number 4, Racing Days. One of the few polygonal 3D racers available on the system. It featured multiple cars and tracks, and felt like Gran Turismo with a really bad frame rate. It does show how Pippin could pull off impressive 3D for the time. Number 3, Gadget. This is a heavily story-based adventure game, set in a steampunk-like future. It uses pre-rendered 3D graphics, with details similar to early CGI movies like Toy Story. Number 2, Shockwave Assault. This is a sci-fi combat game with full-motion video and 3D dogfights. It originally came out on PC and 3DO, and it was one of the few real action games ported to the Pippin. And number 1, Super Marathon. Do you own an Xbox? If so, there's a good chance you've played Halo. It's the game that defined the original Xbox, and it was made by a studio called Bungie. And Bungie's first shooter game was actually not Halo. It was called Marathon. Super Marathon is a release of Marathon 1 and 2 on one Pippin disc. This game laid a lot of the groundwork for Halo, and it pushes the Pippin's boundaries more than any other game, using real-time 3D graphics and high frame rates. And now, last but not least, let's talk about the future of the Pippin. Apple had big plans for the Pippin. They were hoping to sell 3 million units in 3 years, but they only sold 42,000. During Steve Jobs' restructuring of Apple, he canceled many failing projects, including the Pippin. What most people don't know is that before the cancellation, Apple had a Pippin version 2.0 specification ready to go. The Pippin 2 had bold plans. The onboard storage would be doubled so that the OS didn't have to be live booted every time from a disk. The CD drive would be replaced by a DVD drive, and an MPEG-2 decoder would be added for advanced video. A cable modem would also be built into the console. The Pippin 2 was also planned to support FireWire, massively opening up the possibilities for accessories. It's too bad the Pippin 2 never happened, but I have good news. The Pippin has huge modding potential, and in 2019, hobbyists cracked the Pippin's software authentication. This means homebrew games and apps might start to appear, and yes, somebody got it to run Doom. Thanks for watching. I've also made videos like this on the Virtual Boy and the Super Can. You can check those out here. I got the idea to make this video after one of my friends and a few commenters suggested it. Thanks guys. If you have any more video ideas, let me know. Have a great day.